Hi everyone, are you seeking a life of deeper meaning, resilience, and inner peace? In a world filled with constant noise and distraction, ancient wisdom offers a beacon of clarity. Welcome to our exploration of A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy by William B. Irvine, a transformative book that brings the timeless philosophy of Stoicism into our modern lives. William B. Irvine, a professor of philosophy at Wright State University, has dedicated his career to making ancient philosophical concepts accessible and practical for today's readers. In this acclaimed work, he distills the teachings of Stoic thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus into actionable strategies for cultivating tranquility, virtue, and joy amidst life's challenges. Since its publication, A Guide to the Good Life has resonated with readers worldwide, praised for its insightful blend of historical wisdom and contemporary relevance. Whether you're new to Stoicism or seeking to deepen your understanding, this book offers a compelling roadmap to living a more intentional and fulfilling life. Join us as we delve into the key principles and practices outlined in Irvine's guide, uncovering how ancient Stoic philosophy can empower us to navigate the complexities of modern existence with grace and purpose. Negative visualization. What's the worst that can happen? Chapter: Negative visualization. What's the worst that can happen? Introduces a powerful, transformative technique from the Stoic psychological toolkit aimed at achieving a deeper, more sustainable form of contentment. The central problem it seeks to address is our inherent insatiability, the frustrating human tendency to quickly adapt to having what we want and immediately begin desiring something more, leaving us in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction. The Stoics recognize that we often fail to appreciate the good things in our lives simply because we take them for granted. Their radical solution? Deliberately contemplate the loss of what you value. This technique, known as negative visualization, involves actively imagining that the things you hold dear, your relationships, your possessions, your health, even life itself, have been taken away. For instance, instead of merely enjoying your spouse's company, you might pause to imagine life without them. Rather than simply driving your car, you picture it being stolen. This isn't meant to induce misery, but, paradoxically, to jolt you into realizing how wonderful it is that you still possess these things. By vividly confronting the potential absence of something, you dramatically increase your appreciation for its present reality. This practice is presented as a potent antidote to hedonic adaptation. It prevents us from becoming bored with our current circumstances, no matter how fortunate, by constantly reminding us that they could be worse. The text highlights that this technique is accessible to everyone, regardless of their external circumstances. Even someone with only a loincloth can contemplate the possibility of losing it, and if that happens, be thankful for their health or simply being alive. While it might sound like a recipe for pessimism, the chapter argues that negative visualization actually transforms Stoics into full-blown optimists. By frequently contemplating worst-case scenarios, they come to deeply appreciate the present reality, restoring their capacity for joy. This deliberate practice offers the profound sense of appreciation that sometimes follows a catastrophe, but without the actual suffering and danger involved. It teaches us, as the text puts it, to want the things we already have. Seneca, in his letter of consolation to Marcia mourning her son, encourages her not to dwell on the loss of happiness but to reflect on how much worse off she would be had she never experienced the joy of having him at all. Epictetus suggests that when a servant breaks a cup and you feel anger rising, you should imagine the same incident happening at someone else's house and how you would react, likely with calm acceptance, recognizing the insignificance of the broken object. This form of projective visualization helps temper negative emotions by changing our perspective. Crucially, negative visualization is presented as an intellectual exercise, distinct from worrying. It's a mental rehearsal that prepares you for potential loss while simultaneously enhancing your present enjoyment. It teaches you to enjoy fully without clinging fiercely, making your joy more durable in the face of life's inevitable changes. By recognizing the impermanence of external things, this practice helps you cultivate a state of mind where you can be genuinely satisfied with your life as it is, liberating you from the endless, unsatisfying chase for more. The dichotomy of control, on becoming invincible. The dichotomy of control, on becoming invincible, reveals a fundamental Stoic technique designed to grant us incredible inner strength and tranquility. Learning to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not, and focusing our energies solely on the former. This concept is introduced by Epictetus and is perhaps the most well-known Stoic principle. The Stoics observed that much of our anxiety, disappointment, and suffering stems from concerning ourselves with things over which we ultimately have no power. Epictetus famously begins his handbook by stating, "Some things are up to us and some are not up to us." He lists our opinions, impulses, desires, and aversions as things within our control, while our bodies, possessions, reputation, and other people's actions are not. While Epictetus presented this as a dichotomy, the text suggests it's more accurately viewed as a trichotomy of control, dividing things into three categories. 1. Things over which we have complete control. These are primarily our internal states, our goals, our values, and our character. Marcus Aurelius highlights that we alone can prevent ourselves from achieving goodness and integrity. We have complete power to cultivate qualities like sincerity, dignity, industriousness, sobriety, temperance in manner and speech, and to control our temper. By focusing on these, our efforts have guaranteed results. 2. Things over which we have no control at all. This includes external events entirely beyond our influence, such as whether the sun will rise tomorrow. The Stoics advise that we should not concern ourselves with these things. Worrying about them is a waste of time and generates needless anxiety. 3. Things over which we have some but not complete control. This category includes many common pursuits like winning a tennis match, getting a manuscript published, or the outcome of a project. Here lies a potential pitfall for tranquility, as the external result is not guaranteed. To navigate this third category without sacrificing tranquility, the Stoics, or at least, the Stoicism presented, advocated a powerful technique: internalizing our goals. Instead of setting an external goal, e.g., win the tennis match, we set an internal goal, e.g., play the best tennis match I am capable of playing. The Stoic focus shifts from the outcome to the effort, the process, and living in accordance with their values. The brilliance of this approach is that by internalizing our goals, we move them into the category of things over which we do have complete control: our effort, our intention, our character during the activity. The text notes that while the author attributes this specific internalization technique to the Stoics as a logical extension of their principles, there might be limited direct evidence of it in ancient texts, though it perfectly aligns with their aim of retaining tranquility while engaging in uncertain endeavors. The result of consistently applying this distinction and internalizing goals is a profound sense of invincibility. As Epictetus suggests, if you refuse to enter contests you are capable of losing, you will never lose. By defining winning in terms of your own virtuous effort rather than external results, you ensure that success is always within your grasp. This practice allows us to undertake challenging endeavors, participate actively in the world, like Cato fighting Caesar, and strive for excellence without being subject to the crushing anxiety and disappointment that comes from attachment to unpredictable external outcomes. It frees us to find satisfaction not in external validation or fortune, but in the mastery of our own mind and actions. Fatalism. Letting go of the past and the present. Fatalism. Letting go of the past and the present introduces a potent, albeit initially challenging, Stoic technique for safeguarding our inner peace. Adopting a fatalistic attitude toward certain aspects of reality. This isn't about passively accepting future events, but rather a deliberate practice of releasing control over what has already occurred and what is happening in the fleeting present moment. The core argument is that a significant source of our distress comes from wishing that reality were different than it is or has been. The Stoics recognized the futility and suffering inherent in clinging to alternative pasts or present circumstances. Here's how this practice works and why the Stoics advocated it. Fatalism regarding the past. The Stoics counsel us to be fatalistic about the past because, Quite simply, it cannot be changed. Wishing that yesterday's events had unfolded differently is a pointless exercise that only fuels dissatisfaction. Our actions cannot alter what has already occurred. Fatalism regarding the present. More strikingly, the Stoics argue for fatalism regarding the present moment. As soon as we attempt to act to change what is happening right now, that moment has already slipped into the past and is beyond our reach. Therefore, worrying or struggling against the immediate present is as futile as fighting the past. Accepting what is. Epictetus encapsulates this by advising us to want events to happen as they do happen. This applies specifically to events that have already happened or are currently happening. It's about aligning our desires with the reality of the past and present. The benefit. Cultivating satisfaction. The profound benefit of this practice, according to the Stoics, is the preservation of tranquility and the cultivation of satisfaction. By refusing to compare our current situation to how it could have been better in the past or present, we make our reality, whatever it may be, more tolerable and even a source of contentment. Instead of spending our days dissatisfied because circumstances aren't ideal, we learn to be happy with whatever we have. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, we only truly own the present moment, and we should strive to live fully in this fleeting instant. Connection to other techniques. This fatalism aligns seamlessly with the Stoic dichotomy, or trichotomy, of control, which advises us not to concern ourselves with things outside our control. The past and the present moment are squarely in this category. Irvine also highlights that this practice is a fascinating mirror image of negative visualization. While negative visualization makes us appreciate what we have by contemplating loss, fatalism makes us appreciate what we have by refusing to dwell on how things could have been better. Self-denial. On dealing with the dark side of pleasure. This chapter unveils a striking Stoic practice that might seem counterintuitive at first glance. The deliberate act of voluntarily experiencing minor discomforts and foregoing opportunities for pleasure. This isn't about grim endurance or self-punishment. The Stoics, as presented here, welcome these experiences not to punish themselves, but to increase their enjoyment of life. One key aspect of this practice involves voluntarily causing ourselves discomfort that we could easily avoid. Seneca, for instance, suggested occasionally living as if you were poor. Musonius Rufus recommended deliberately underdressing for cold weather, going shoeless, or allowing oneself to become hungry or thirsty even when food and water are readily available. These are presented as minor hardships, welcomed by the Stoics, unlike self-inflicted discomfort intended for punishment. The purposes behind embracing this voluntary discomfort are deeply practical and inspiring. It helps in building fortitude. By facing minor hardships on purpose, we harden ourselves against future, unavoidable misfortunes. Seneca recommends taking steps to ensure we never get too comfortable, stating that if we harden ourselves in this manner, we are much less likely to be disturbed by difficulties. It can help in reducing anxiety. By discovering that we can tolerate more discomfort than we might have thought, our anxiety about what the future holds can be lessened. Crucially, it boosts our appreciation for what we already have. Experiencing discomfort makes us more grateful for the comfort we usually take for granted. Irvine uses the simple yet powerful example. The warmth and shelter of a room are far better appreciated after experiencing the cold and blustery conditions outside. Avoiding discomfort at all costs is deemed counterproductive in the long run. Beyond welcoming discomfort, Stoicism advocates periodically saying no to pleasure. The reason lies in what the Stoics saw as the dark side of pleasure. Seneca warns that pursuing pleasure is akin to hunting a wild beast. Once captured, it can turn and tear us apart. He also used the metaphor of pleasure becoming a captor, noting that, the more pleasures a man captures, the more masters will he have to serve. The Cynic philosopher Diogenes similarly cautioned that pleasure uses deception and baneful drugs, like Homer's Circe, to undo men through their senses, ultimately driving its victim into a sty, to live like a pig or a wolf. Intense pleasures, the Stoics felt, should sometimes be abstained from, particularly those that could capture us in a single encounter. This leads to the vital Stoic trait of self-control. Without it, we risk becoming slaves to our desires. Marcus Aurelius described someone lacking self-control as playing the role of a slave, twitching puppet-wise at every pull of self-interest, doomed to spend life ever grumbling at today or lamenting over tomorrow. Therefore, we must learn to resist the murmurs of the flesh. It's important to note that the Stoics are not portrayed as being anti-pleasure. They could enjoy things like friendship, family life, a meal, or wealth, but they advised being circumspect. Epictetus advised being on guard even while enjoying pleasant things, recognizing the potential to cross the line into excess, like gluttony. Seneca contrasted the ordinary person who embraces pleasure with the sage who enchains it, viewing it not as the highest good, or even a good at all. Perhaps the most inspiring takeaway is the surprising Stoic insight that exercising self-control and abstaining from pleasure can itself be a source of pleasure. Epictetus offered the example of resisting the craving for ice cream while dieting. By refraining, you forego the gastronomic pleasure but gain the pleasure of being pleased and will praise yourself. Seneca likewise noted the unique pleasure derived from being able to enjoy incredibly simple fare like water, barley meal, and crusts of barley bread. The pleasure of being able to derive pleasure from this sort of food. This highlights that Stoic self-denial doesn't necessarily diminish overall pleasure but shifts its source, cultivating a deeper, more enduring form of satisfaction found in inner strength and simplicity. Meditation. Watching ourselves practice Stoicism. In this chapter, William B. Irvine invites readers into the heart of Stoic self-mastery through the art of self-reflection. Irvine explains that practicing Stoicism is not just about learning philosophy, but about developing the habit of observing our own thoughts and actions, essentially becoming both the actor and the audience of our lives. He draws on the ancient Stoic tradition of daily meditation, where practitioners review the day's events each evening, asking themselves whether they lived according to Stoic virtues, responded well to challenges, or could have acted more wisely. This honest self-examination isn't about self-criticism or regret over what's already happened, since the past is outside our control, but about learning and improving, so that each day we grow closer to the Stoic ideal. Irvine illustrates this with the example of a Stoic facing a frustrating encounter. Perhaps someone cuts you off in traffic or a colleague is rude at work. In the moment, you might feel anger or irritation. But in your evening meditation, you replay the scene in your mind and ask, did I respond as a Stoic should? Was I ruled by emotion, or did I act with reason and virtue? Over time, this practice helps you catch yourself in the moment, transforming reactive habits into thoughtful responses. Irvine also encourages the use of morning meditation, where you anticipate possible challenges the day might bring, like difficult people or unexpected setbacks, so you can prepare your mind to meet them with calm and composure. By making this daily ritual of self-watching a habit, Stoics become active participants in their own moral progress. Irvine's message is inspiring. True Stoic joy isn't the result of perfection, but of persistent, mindful effort. Each day is a new opportunity to watch ourselves, learn, and become a little more resilient, wise, and tranquil. In this way, meditation is not just a philosophical exercise, but a practical tool for living a good life, one thoughtful choice at a time. Duty. On loving mankind. In chapter Duty. On loving mankind, William B. Irvine explores one of the most profound and challenging aspects of Stoic philosophy: our responsibility to love and care for humanity as a whole. This chapter is both a call to action and a meditation on the nature of human relationships, offering timeless wisdom for cultivating a tranquil and meaningful life. Irvine begins by acknowledging a central paradox. While other people are the source of our greatest joys, love, friendship, camaraderie, they are also the root of much of our distress, including anger, envy, and anxiety. The Stoics, however, do not advise retreating from society. Instead, they remind us that humans are fundamentally social creatures, designed to live and work together much like bees in a hive. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic emperors, believed that we are each created with a purpose to live rationally and socially. Our duty, then, is to contribute to the greater good, not just tolerate others but actively care for and love them. This means engaging with all people, even those who are difficult or disagreeable, and striving to benefit society as a whole. The Stoic model of duty is humble and unassuming. We are encouraged to fulfill our social responsibilities quietly and efficiently, without seeking praise or recognition. True virtue, according to the Stoics, is found in doing good for its own sake, not for external rewards or gratitude. Irvine highlights that even the most dedicated Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, sometimes struggled with feelings of frustration or disdain toward others. Yet, the Stoic commitment to duty means persisting in kindness and service regardless of personal feelings. This resilience is not rooted in fear of punishment or desire for thanks, but in the understanding that fulfilling our social function is essential for inner tranquility and a well-lived life. The chapter also contrasts Stoic duty with modern attitudes, where personal happiness is often pursued by escaping obligations. Irvine argues, echoing the Stoics, that true contentment comes not from shirking our responsibilities, but from embracing them. When we act out of a sense of duty to others, we find deeper satisfaction and peace than in the pursuit of self-interest alone. Marcus Aurelius, despite his personal struggles with the flaws of humanity, remained steadfast in his commitment to serve and love mankind. His example teaches that even when our hearts are not naturally inclined to love, our actions can still reflect our duty and lead to a more harmonious and tranquil life. In summary, this chapter inspires readers to rise above self-interest and embrace the Stoic ideal of loving mankind not as a burden, but as a path to true joy and tranquility. By quietly and consistently doing our duty to others, we not only improve the world, but also fulfill our deepest potential as human beings. Social relations. On dealing with other people. In life, we inevitably encounter annoying or difficult people. In fulfilling our social duty, the Stoics offer several inspiring strategies for maintaining our tranquility. While we cannot control others' actions or opinions, we have complete authority over our responses. By focusing on our own behavior and attitudes, we can foster harmonious relationships and protect our peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius suggests reminding ourselves that others likely find us annoying too, fostering a sense of humility and perspective. When faced with challenging individuals, Irvine suggests viewing their actions through a lens of compassion, recognizing that everyone is influenced by their own experiences and struggles. He also advises reflecting on our own shortcomings when irritated by others' flaws. This encourages empathy and reduces the tendency to be overly critical. Our annoyance is more detrimental than the annoying behavior. Letting ourselves become irritated only worsens our own state. Marcus counsels us to avoid wasting time speculating about what others are doing, saying, thinking, or scheming. Allowing our minds to be consumed by such external concerns disrupts our inner peace. A good Stoic, according to Marcus, focuses on serving the public interest when considering others' thoughts. Irvine also touches upon the Stoic concept of avoiding becoming a seek sorrow, a term coined by Samuel Johnson for one who contrives to give himself vexation. This highlights the Stoic emphasis on taking responsibility for our own emotional responses in social situations. In essence, this section inspires us to engage with others mindfully and deliberately. It encourages us to cultivate inner strength, choose our close relationships wisely, and approach difficult interactions with perspective and a focus on our own values and duties. The Stoics understood that while social connection is fundamental to human life, maintaining tranquility requires a conscious and thoughtful approach to dealing with the diverse and sometimes challenging nature of other people. Insults. On putting up with put-downs. Chapter. Insults. On putting up with put-downs, addresses how the Stoics developed techniques to prevent the insults of others from disrupting our tranquility. Irvine begins by noting that people are often highly sensitive to insults, which he defines broadly to include verbal abuse, slights, and physical acts. The chapter inspires us to rethink our reactions to insults and to adopt a more resilient and philosophical approach. One of the primary Stoic strategies is to pause and consider the truth of the insult. Seneca poses the question, why is it an insult to be told what is self-evident? For instance, if someone mocks us for being bald when we are indeed bald, there is little reason to be upset. This encourages a rational assessment of the criticism rather than an immediate emotional response. Another technique involves considering the informational basis and character of the insulter. Epictetus suggests that the person might be saying something bad because they genuinely believe it. Seneca adds that if we don't respect the source of the insult and consider them contemptible, we should feel relieved by their disapproval, as it might indicate we are on the right path. He also likens those who insult us to overgrown children, whose words should not unduly upset us. Marcus Aurelius advises that instead of anger, we should feel pity for those with flawed characters who resort to insults. As we progress in Stoicism, we should aim to become increasingly indifferent to others' opinions, thereby feeling no sting when insulted. The Stoic sage, Irvine suggests, would likely regard insults as merely the barking of a dog, something to note but not to be upset by. A crucial point emphasized by Epictetus is that the insult itself does not harm us. It is our judgment about the insult that causes the distress. He states, what is insulting is not the person who abuses you or hits you, but the judgment about them that they are insulting. If we can convince ourselves that no real harm has been done, the insult loses its power. This aligns with the broader Stoic principle that our values and interpretations are within our control. The chapter also explores effective ways to respond to insults, rejecting the common impulse for counterinsults. Instead, the Stoics recommend humor. Seneca praises Cato's witty response when someone spit in his face. After calmly wiping it off, Cato said, "I will swear to anyone, Lentulus, that people are wrong to say that you cannot use your mouth." Similarly, Socrates joked about needing a helmet after someone boxed his ears. Self-deprecating humor can also be effective, as demonstrated by Vatinius, who joked so much about his deformities that others had nothing to add. Epictetus suggests responding to criticism by questioning the insulter's competence. Another powerful Stoic response to insults is no response at all. Musonius advises us to calmly and quietly bear what has happened, considering it appropriate behavior for a person who wants to be magnanimous. Seneca highlights Cato's reaction when struck at the public baths. Cato simply continued bathing without acknowledging the assailant until he apologized. A non-response can show that we consider the insulter's behavior childish and beneath our notice. However, the Stoics were not complete pacifists regarding insults. Seneca suggests there are times when a vigorous response or even punishment is appropriate, not because we are personally wronged, but to correct improper behavior, like a teacher disciplining a disruptive student. The goal is to correct the behavior, not to retaliate emotionally. The chapter concludes by touching on the complexities of dealing with insults directed at disadvantaged groups, cautioning against creating hypersensitivity and dependence on external authorities. Ultimately, the inspiring message of this part is that our reaction to insults is a choice, and by adopting Stoic principles, we can cultivate resilience, maintain our tranquility, and even respond with wisdom and humor. Grief. On vanquishing tears with reason. This chapter offers an inspiring Stoic perspective on navigating one of life's most challenging emotions. It doesn't suggest we become emotionless, but rather that we learn to manage grief through the power of reason. The chapter begins by acknowledging that some sorrow is a natural human response, a reflex even when we experience loss. Seneca, in his Consolation to Polybius, notes that nature requires from us some sorrow, while more than this is the result of vanity. But never will I demand of you that you should not grieve at all. However, the Stoics believed that excessive grief is detrimental to our tranquility and that we have the capacity to minimize it through reasoned thinking. Seneca advises Polybius that reason will maintain a mean which will copy neither indifference nor madness, and will keep us in the state that is the mark of an affectionate, and not an unbalanced mind. He encourages Polybius to let your tears flow, but let them also cease. Let deepest sighs be drawn from your breast, but let them also find an end. One powerful technique the Stoics advocate for both preventing and overcoming grief is negative visualization. Seneca advises Marcia, who remained grief-stricken years after her son's death, to consider how much worse her situation could be if she had never enjoyed his presence at all. By contemplating potential losses beforehand, we can appreciate what we have and lessen the impact of future grief. In his consolation to his mother, Helvia, who grieved his exile, Seneca takes a unique approach. Since he, as a Stoic, does not grieve his circumstances, he reasons that Helvia should not grieve for him either. This highlights the Stoic emphasis on internal resilience and finding contentment regardless of external events. While acknowledging that reason might not entirely eliminate grief, especially in extreme cases where emotions dominate intellect, the Stoics offer a practical approach. Outwardly display appropriate signs of grief without allowing ourselves to be consumed by the emotion internally. Epictetus uses a compelling analogy. We wouldn't try to help a poisoned person by taking poison ourselves, nor a sick person by catching their illness. Similarly, catching another's grief doesn't help them and only harms us. The goal is to help others overcome their grief, and we can do so most effectively by maintaining our own reasoned composure. Ultimately, the Stoic approach to grief, as presented in this chapter, is not about cold detachment but about using our rational faculty to navigate loss in a way that honors our connections without succumbing to prolonged suffering. It's an inspiring call to cultivate inner strength and find a path through sorrow with wisdom and reason as our guides. Anger. On overcoming anti-joy. Step into the realm of Stoic wisdom with chapter Anger. On overcoming anti-joy. This isn't just a discussion about managing a common emotion, it's an inspiring call to dismantle the very force that steals our inner peace and joy. The chapter, drawing heavily from Seneca's insightful essay on anger, immediately confronts us with the stark reality of this destructive feeling. Anger is not merely a fleeting irritation, it's characterized as brief insanity, and Seneca argues that no plague has cost the human race more than its devastating impact. This powerful statement inspires us to truly consider the immense personal and interpersonal damage that unchecked anger can inflict. Interestingly, the chapter addresses a common justification for anger, that it can sometimes be beneficial or motivational. However, with a compelling analogy, Seneca challenges this notion. Just as some people survive shipwrecks, it doesn't mean we should willingly court disaster. The inherent risk of anger, its tendency to spiral out of control once ignited, far outweighs any perceived short-term benefits. This inspires a shift in perspective, urging us to find more reasoned and sustainable motivators. The Stoics offer practical and inspiring strategies to prevent anger from taking root in our minds. One key approach is to actively combat our inclination to assume the worst in others. By consciously choosing to interpret events with a degree of charity and avoiding hasty negative judgments, we can diffuse potential triggers before they ignite. Furthermore, we are encouraged to lower our sensitivity to the petty annoyances of daily life. The slammed door, the minor mistake, these vulgar trivialities, should not be granted the power to shatter our tranquility. As Seneca wisely notes, our anger invariably lasts longer than the damage done to us, a humbling thought that motivates us to maintain perspective. When anger does threaten to surface, the Stoics provide inspiring techniques for immediate management. The chapter highlights the power of humor as a deflecting shield against insults, a frequent catalyst for anger. We are presented with the examples of Cato, who responded to being spat upon with a joke, and Socrates, who similarly met a boxed ear with amusement. These anecdotes are not just amusing, they are inspiring demonstrations of how a shift in perspective can disarm aggression and preserve inner peace. Drawing on wisdom echoed in Buddhism, Seneca also suggests a fascinating method of actively countering the physical manifestations of anger. By consciously forcing ourselves to relax our facial muscles, soften our voice, and slow our movements, we can create a feedback loop that begins to calm our internal state. This provides an empowering and actionable technique to regain control in the heat of the moment. Finally, the chapter touches upon the unfortunate reality of individuals who seem to savor their anger, mistakenly believing it provides them with strength. The Stoics view this as a tragic existence, a self-inflicted torment in a life too short for such negativity. Seneca poignantly asks, why not instead make yourself a person to be loved by all while you live and missed when you have made your departure? This inspiring question encapsulates the core message. We have the power to choose joy over the destructive grip of anger, cultivating a life of tranquility and positive connection. Personal values. On seeking fame. Step into the illuminating wisdom of chapter, Personal Values. On seeking fame, where the Stoics challenge one of society's most pervasive aspirations. This chapter doesn't just discourage the pursuit of fame. It compellingly reveals how this very pursuit actively undermines our tranquility and true happiness. The chapter opens by stating a core Stoic belief. Unhappiness stems largely from our confusion about what truly holds value. Among the mistaken values people chase is fame, in its various forms, from global renown to local popularity or even the admiration of friends. The Stoics argue that we are convinced fame will bring happiness, but we fail to recognize the significant price it demands. To illustrate this price of fame, Epictetus offers a relatable example. Imagine striving for social prominence within your circle and someone throws a banquet but doesn't invite you. The likely emotional cost? Upset and feeling snubbed. But even if you are invited, Epictetus points out that you've paid a price. You've likely had to cultivate the favor of the host, perhaps saying or doing things that weren't truly aligned with your values, all in the hope of receiving such an invitation. This example poignantly reveals how the desire for recognition can make us dependent on external validation and compromise our autonomy. The chapter delves into the difficulty most people face in ignoring the opinions of others. We often work tirelessly to gain admiration and then fear losing it. The Stoics offer a powerful counter. Realize that to win admiration, we often have to contort ourselves to fit others' expectations, a constant and exhausting performance. Isn't it more liberating, they suggest, to focus on living virtuously, on doing what is right, regardless of external applause? Marcus Aurelius takes aim at the ultimate form of fame, immortal fame, declaring it an empty, hollow thing. He provokes us to consider the futility of desiring to be remembered after death, when we ourselves will no longer exist to enjoy that fame. Moreover, he astutely observes the irony of future generations praising us without ever knowing us, while we struggle to even praise our contemporaries. Instead of fixating on a distant, unattainable legacy, Marcus wisely advises us to make the best of today, focusing on the present moment and what we can control. The chapter also offers an inspiring pathway to break free from the obsession with external validation. The Stoics suggest we should work at becoming indifferent to what others think of us. The anecdote of the aspiring novelist highlights this perfectly. If she announces her ambitious project, some might offer genuine encouragement, but others may respond with gleeful pessimism, predicting failure at every stage. The Stoics would advise this woman to resolutely ignore the naysayers and continue pursuing her goal based on its inherent value to her, not on the approval of others. Interestingly, the chapter notes an inspiring paradox. By refusing to seek admiration, Stoics might inadvertently gain it. Their indifference to public opinion can be interpreted as self-confidence, a quality many admire. However, the chapter realistically acknowledges that even when the Stoic reveals their philosophical approach, it might not trigger a widespread conversion. People might dismiss it as impractical or unsuitable for them, often clinging to the very values, like fame, that the Stoics challenge. Ultimately, this chapter serves as an inspiring call to re-evaluate our personal values and question the allure of fame. It encourages us to recognize the costs associated with seeking external validation and to find freedom and tranquility by focusing on virtue and living authentically, irrespective of public opinion. The examples of social snubs and the aspiring novelist vividly illustrate the practical implications of the Stoic perspective, inspiring us to prioritize inner peace over the fleeting and often fickle nature of fame. Personal values. On luxurious living. Embark on a thought-provoking journey with chapter, Personal Values, on Luxurious Living, where William B. Irvine, drawing on Stoic wisdom, compellingly argues against the conventional pursuit of extravagant lifestyles. This chapter inspires us to question our deep-seated beliefs about wealth and happiness, revealing how the quest for luxury can actually detract from a truly good life. The chapter kicks off by challenging the seemingly independent value we place on wealth. The Stoics suggest that often, the primary motivation behind our pursuit of wealth is the desire for fame, believing that material possessions will garner the admiration of others. If fame itself is a questionable pursuit, then the accumulation of wealth solely for its sake becomes equally dubious. Seneca, in his Consolation to Helvia, reminds us that even in times of grief, the lack of material possessions is not the true source of sorrow. Musonius Rufus reinforces this by pointing out that many wealthy individuals still experience sadness and misery, proving that affluence is no guarantee of happiness. Epictetus goes even further, stating that, "It is better to die of hunger with distress and fear gone than to live upset in the midst of plenty." He argues that not needing wealth is more valuable than wealth itself. The Stoics don't just claim that wealth fails to bring happiness, they suggest it can actively make us miserable. The chapter then dismantles the notion that luxurious living enhances pleasure. Musonius questions whether those who indulge in extravagant meals truly experience more pleasure than those with simple diets. He uses the analogy of inferior iron needing constant sharpening, suggesting that people with extravagant tastes become unhappy unless their meals are excessively enhanced. Irvine elaborates on this, pointing out the danger of losing our ability to take delight in simple things if we become accustomed to luxury. What was once enjoyable might no longer satisfy our discriminating palate after prolonged exposure to extravagance. Musonius even deems the pleasure connected with food as one of the most difficult to combat. Similarly, the Stoics advocate for simple clothing, housing, and furnishings. Musonius advises dressing for protection, not to impress. He suggests that housing should be functional, merely sheltering us from the elements, and that even a cave would suffice. He cautions against the burdens of maintaining fancy houses with courtyards and gilded ceilings. Simple furnishings, like earthenware and iron vessels, are preferred over silver and gold due to their practicality and lower risk of theft. A key argument against luxurious living is that it rarely leads to satisfaction; instead, it fuels a craving for more. Seneca asks Lucilius to imagine possessing great wealth, a marble-floored, gold-decked house, and royal purple clothing, yet concludes that this would only teach him to desire even greater things. This is because the desire for luxury is boundless. Furthermore, the Stoics view a life of luxury as making one a slave to the body's whims and pleasures. Musonius even states he would rather be sick than live in luxury, as sickness harms the body, but luxury harms the soul by making it undisciplined and cowardly. He concludes that luxurious living must be completely avoided. By foregoing luxurious living, the Stoics argue that our needs become easily met, as life's necessities are cheap and readily available. Those who chase luxury waste considerable time and energy that could be devoted to more worthwhile pursuits. Seneca advises aiming for an amount that does not descend to poverty, and yet is not far removed from poverty, advocating for frugality and viewing poverty without prejudice. Epictetus offers a more austere view, suggesting we take care of the body only to the point of bare necessity, enough food, clothing, and shelter. Interestingly, despite this Spartan lifestyle, a Stoic practicing negative visualization might be more content than someone living in luxury. The chapter clarifies an important distinction: Stoicism is not cynicism. While cynicism demands abject poverty, Stoicism calls for plain living, not penance. Seneca explains that it is perfectly acceptable for a Stoic to acquire and even enjoy wealth, as long as they don't harm others to obtain it and do not cling to it. The ideal is to be indifferent to riches, neither despondent in their absence nor inflated by their presence. A wise person, Seneca claims, reflects on poverty most when surrounded by riches, ensuring that wealth remains their slave, not their master. In conclusion, chapter, A Guide to the Good Life, powerfully inspires us to re-examine our relationship with wealth and luxury. By highlighting the potential pitfalls of this pursuit, its connection to the fleeting nature of fame, its failure to guarantee happiness, its tendency to diminish our appreciation for simplicity, and its potential to enslave us to our desires, the Stoics offer a compelling vision of a good life rooted in contentment with little, independence from external validation, and the freedom that comes from not being bound by the relentless pursuit of more. The chapter encourages us to prioritize virtue and tranquility over the deceptive allure of luxurious living. Exile. On surviving a change of place. In this chapter, William B. Irvine explores the Stoic approach to exile, offering profound insights into how we can maintain inner tranquility amidst significant life changes. Irvine begins by highlighting that exile was a common experience among ancient Stoics. Philosophers like Musonius Rufus, Epictetus, and Seneca faced banishment, yet they responded not with despair but with resilience. For instance, when Piconius Agrippinus learned of his exile, he calmly inquired whether his property had been confiscated. Upon hearing it hadn't, he remarked, "Let us go to Aricia then and dine," exemplifying the Stoic ideal of accepting what cannot be changed with grace. How to be a Stoic while modern readers may not face literal exile. Irvine draws parallels to contemporary experiences such as relocating for work, immigration, or displacement due to unforeseen circumstances. These situations, like ancient exiles, involve leaving behind familiar environments and adapting to new ones. The Stoic response, as Irvine suggests, is to focus on what lies within our control, our attitudes and actions, rather than external circumstances. Irvine emphasizes that by embracing the Stoic dichotomy of control, we can find stability within ourselves. He encourages readers to view such transitions not as losses but as opportunities for personal growth and the practice of virtue. By doing so, we transform potential sources of distress into avenues for cultivating inner peace. In essence, Chapter 16 serves as a guide for navigating life's upheavals with Stoic wisdom, reminding us that while we cannot always choose our circumstances, we can choose our responses, and therein lies our true power. Old age. On being banished to a nursing home. Old age. On being banished to a nursing home, confronts a fear many harbor with a characteristically Stoic lens, transforming the prospect of a seemingly bleak end into an opportunity for continued virtue and tranquility. Irvine doesn't shy away from the potential hardships of old age and institutional living, but instead offers an inspiring framework for navigating these challenges with resilience and purpose. The chapter compellingly argues that our distress at the thought of a nursing home often stems from our attachment to external comforts and a fear of losing independence and social status. The Stoics recognized that while such losses can be inconvenient and even painful, they do not diminish our capacity for virtue, which is the sole true good. Irvine encourages us to shift our focus from what we might lose to what remains within our control: our thoughts, our judgments, and our actions. One powerful Stoic principle Irvine highlights in this context is the acceptance of what we cannot change. The reality of aging and the potential need for assisted living are often outside our direct control. Resisting this reality only leads to frustration and suffering. Instead, the Stoics advocate for amor fati, a love of fate, which involves accepting and even embracing our circumstances, whatever they may be. Irvine doesn't present this as passive resignation but as an active choice to find meaning and purpose even within limitations. He uses the example of individuals who, despite physical decline, find ways to engage with others, to learn, or to practice gratitude, demonstrating that a fulfilling inner life remains possible even in restricted environments. The chapter inspires us to cultivate inner resilience and mental fortitude in preparation for old age. The Stoics believed in the importance of premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization, not just for loss but also for the challenges of aging. By contemplating potential difficulties like declining health, reduced mobility, or the impersonal nature of institutional care, we can mentally prepare ourselves and diminish the shock and fear when these realities arise. This isn't about dwelling on negativity, but about proactively building mental armor. Irvine suggests that reflecting on the lives of Stoic philosophers who faced various forms of adversity can serve as inspiring examples of maintaining composure and virtue in challenging circumstances. Furthermore, the chapter emphasizes the importance of our attitude and how we choose to respond to our situation. Even in a nursing home setting, we retain the capacity for kindness, for wisdom, for justice in our interactions with fellow residents and staff. Irvine suggests that we can choose to be a source of positivity and support, finding meaning in our connections with others and in the exercise of our virtues. He implicitly contrasts this with the alternative, succumbing to bitterness and resentment, which only exacerbates suffering. The Stoics also remind us that our value as human beings is not contingent on our physical abilities or social roles. Our worth lies in our capacity for reason and virtue. Therefore, even in a situation where our physical capabilities are diminished and our social roles have changed, our fundamental worth remains intact. Irvine encourages us to find dignity and purpose in our continued existence and in the opportunity to practice Stoic principles in a new context. In essence, old age, on being banished to a nursing home, offers an inspiring Stoic perspective on a potentially daunting life stage. It reframes the nursing home not as a place of despair but as another arena in which to exercise virtue, to practice acceptance, and to cultivate inner peace. By shifting our focus from external losses to internal resources, by embracing what we cannot control, and by actively choosing our attitude, we can navigate old age, even in challenging circumstances, with dignity, resilience, and a profound sense of inner tranquility. The chapter reminds us that the good life is not defined by external freedom but by the internal freedom that comes from living in accordance with Stoic wisdom. Dying. On a good end to a good life. Dying. On a good end to a good life offers a profound and inspiring Stoic perspective on the final act of life, urging us to approach death not with fear, but with acceptance and even a sense of completion. Irvine masterfully synthesizes Stoic philosophy to demonstrate how life well lived can culminate in a good death, one faced with tranquility and a clear conscience. The chapter compellingly argues that our fear of death often stems from a misunderstanding of its nature and our attachment to what we will leave behind. The Stoics viewed death as a natural and inevitable part of life's cycle, no more inherently bad than birth or the changing of seasons. Irvine emphasizes that clinging to life out of fear is often rooted in anxieties about unfulfilled desires or a belief that more time will somehow guarantee happiness, a notion the Stoics would likely deem illusory. Instead of fearing death, the Stoics encourage us to focus on living well in the present. Irvine highlights the idea that a good life serves as the foundation for a good death. By striving to live virtuously, to fulfill our duties, and to appreciate the present moment, we diminish the regrets that might otherwise haunt our final days. The chapter implicitly suggests that a life spent chasing fleeting pleasures or external validation will likely lead to a more anxious and fearful approach to death, as there will always be a sense of incompleteness. One powerful Stoic practice Irvine discusses in relation to death is negative visualization, extending it to our own mortality. By regularly contemplating the inevitability of our own death, we can learn to appreciate the preciousness of life and to focus on what truly matters. This practice isn't morbid, but rather a way to cultivate a healthy perspective and to avoid being caught off guard by the ultimate certainty. Irvine doesn't provide specific anecdotes from this chapter about individuals facing death, but the overarching philosophy serves as its own powerful illustration. Accepting mortality frees us to live more fully. Furthermore, the chapter addresses the Stoic view on grief for the dying. While acknowledging the natural human connection and sorrow at loss, the Stoics cautioned against excessive lamentation that could disrupt the peace of the dying person. Their focus was on allowing the individual to face their end with dignity and composure. Irvine suggests that our primary concern should be the well-being and tranquility of the person who is dying, rather than our own selfish desire to keep them with us. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of legacy, not in terms of material wealth or fame, but in the impact we have had on others and the virtues we have embodied. A life lived with integrity and kindness leaves a positive mark on the world, offering a form of immortality that transcends physical existence. Irvine inspires us to consider what kind of legacy we want to leave and to live in a way that reflects those values. In essence, this chapter offers an inspiring and liberating perspective on death. It encourages us to dismantle our fear by understanding its natural place in the grand scheme of things and by focusing on living a virtuous and meaningful life. By embracing the inevitability of death and prioritizing inner peace, both for ourselves and for those who are passing, we can transform what is often seen as a tragic end into a final act of tranquility and acceptance. The Stoic wisdom presented by Irvine empowers us to face our own mortality, and the mortality of our loved ones, with courage, dignity, and a profound appreciation for the life that was lived. On becoming a Stoic, start now and prepare to be mocked. The chapter immediately stresses the urgency of adopting Stoicism, echoing Epictetus's sentiment that we are no longer children and should begin now. Irvine argues that delaying the practice of Stoicism is more effortful than starting it. He suggests that the energy we spend on negative emotions like envy or the pursuit of fleeting popularity could be redirected towards cultivating inner peace and meaningful relationships through Stoicism. A central theme of this chapter is the inevitability of facing mockery when one chooses to live differently. Irvine cautions that those who learn of your conversion to Stoicism are likely to ridicule you because your adoption of a philosophy challenges their own values and forces them to reflect on their lives, a task they might be reluctant to undertake. To avoid this harassment, Irvine recommends a strategy he terms stealth Stoicism. Stealth Stoicism involves keeping your philosophical pursuits private and practicing Stoic techniques unobtrusively. Irvine suggests modeling yourself after Socrates, who maintained such a low profile that people sought him out for philosophical guidance without realizing he was a philosopher himself. By practicing Stoicism discreetly, you can reap its benefits, such as engaging in negative visualization, without inviting unwanted criticism from friends, relatives, neighbors, and coworkers. While they might observe positive changes in you, they will likely struggle to pinpoint the cause. Despite the potential for mockery, the chapter underscores the significant rewards of practicing Stoicism. It argues that having a philosophy of life, whether Stoicism or another, can dramatically simplify everyday living by providing a clear framework for decision-making. When faced with choices, a guiding philosophy helps discern worthwhile goals from those that lead to wasted effort. Furthermore, the chapter touches upon the effort required for Stoicism versus the effort of a life without it. While techniques like negative visualization and self-denial demand conscious effort, living without a philosophy can lead to wasted effort in pursuing valueless things or pursuing worthwhile goals in a foolish manner, ultimately leading to failure. In conclusion, Chapter 19 is an empowering call to action. It acknowledges the social challenges of adopting a countercultural philosophy like Stoicism but emphasizes the immediate and long-term benefits of doing so. By advocating for a discreet and persistent approach, Irvine encourages readers to begin their Stoic journey now, to focus on internal growth rather than external approval, and to ultimately discover a more meaningful and tranquil way of life, even in the face of mockery. He suggests that the effort invested in Stoicism is a wise use of our time and energy compared to the often fruitless pursuits of a life lived without philosophical guidance. Practicing Stoicism. In chapter Practicing Stoicism, William B. Irvine offers a heartfelt and practical roadmap for integrating Stoic philosophy into daily life. This concluding chapter serves as both a reflection on his personal journey and an invitation for readers to embark on their own path toward tranquility and virtue. 1. Begin with small, deliberate steps. Irvine emphasizes that embracing Stoicism doesn't require an immediate, all-encompassing transformation. Instead, he advocates for starting with manageable practices, such as negative visualization, contemplating potential losses to foster gratitude for what one currently possesses. By gradually incorporating Stoic exercises, individuals can build resilience and inner peace without feeling overwhelmed. 2. Embrace stealth Stoicism. Recognizing that openly practicing Stoicism may invite skepticism or misunderstanding, Irvine introduces the concept of stealth Stoicism. This approach involves quietly applying Stoic principles without drawing attention, allowing individuals to cultivate virtue and tranquility while minimizing external distractions or judgments. 3. Anticipate challenges and surprises. Irvine candidly shares that adopting Stoicism may lead to unexpected challenges, such as confronting deeply ingrained habits or facing resistance from others. However, he also highlights the profound rewards: a heightened sense of joy, clarity, and emotional resilience. By persevering through initial difficulties, practitioners can experience a transformative shift in perspective. 4. Commit to continuous practice. Stoicism, as Irvine underscores, is not a destination but a lifelong journey. It requires ongoing reflection, self-discipline, and a commitment to aligning one's actions with core values. Through consistent practice, individuals can navigate life's uncertainties with grace and maintain a steady course toward personal growth and fulfillment. 5. A personal invitation to transformation. In closing, Irvine extends a warm and earnest invitation to readers to explore Stoicism not as a rigid doctrine, but as a compassionate guide to living a meaningful life. By embracing its teachings, one can cultivate a resilient spirit, find joy in the present moment, and face the future with confidence and serenity. This chapter serves as both a culmination of Irvine's insights and a launching point for readers ready to embark on their own Stoic journey. With sincerity and encouragement, he reminds us that the path to a good life is within reach, beginning with a single, intentional step. Hi everyone's. In closing, remember that the ancient wisdom of Stoicism, as Irvine illuminates, isn't about grim resignation but about actively cultivating tranquility and joy. By embracing practices like negative visualization and focusing on what we can control, we can find inner peace and resilience in a world that often seeks to disrupt it. So, take up this ancient tool, experiment with its techniques, and discover for yourself the good life that awaits. A life less defined by external circumstances and more by your own inner strength and wisdom. As Irvine suggests, you might just find that in practicing Stoicism, you gain a whole new life. Unlock more great book summaries. Subscribe so you never miss a new one.